Hello everyone, Edain here and welcome back. This is the last of the main units ranking video, the Cavalry, and there is not a lot of cavalry to go over. I was actually really struggling to rank a lot of these cavalry units because there are a lot of them that are just so similar, but when you put it all together, this is what I think each one is from worst to best. At the very bottom, at number 18, we have the Elkriders. Probably the unit that has received the least amount of love and could probably do with a complete rework. Their stats are terrible. They've got so low health that they can't even charge into anything without dying. When they try to shoot, their unit starts to stutter step, meaning that if you try to move them again, they take a few seconds just to get back into formation before they can even move again. There's just so much that needs to be fixed with this unit in particular. I think if it's got made into a heroic unit, less entities, more damage, more range, some unique abilities that make them more damage dealing to cavalry, since that's kind of the thing they've been given, although already doing very poor damage to cavalry. So they just need something to put them back on their feet, and maybe even give them a sword so they can actually ride around with Rivendell, because he's the only hero in all of Lothlorien that can mount, and he's kind of alone. He's just kind of alone, and he needs some friends. At number 17, we have the Direwolf Riders, commanded by the Thrallmasters. This unit has quite a few steps you have to overcome. Firstly, I don't think they can be classified as a tier 1 unit, even though they have roughly tier 1 stats. They require you to, firstly, like this tribute card has been summoned to prove my point, you have to give enough tribute cards to a wolf den to allow for wolf breeding, which then allows you to, with the Thrallmasters, summon these Gundabad Wolf Riders. Now, one good thing to note is their cost has been decreased a bit, so they're only now 400 in total, 200 for the Thrallmaster, 200 for the unit. But then after that, they can't be upgraded, so by the time you even get them, they just can't compete with other cavalry units. And they're not really on par with them either, because the only way to give them any kind of buff is have Holdai in the mix, who can't follow them, or by getting orc camps, which, as I've already mentioned with the swordsman video, you should focus on hillmen for the entirety of the early game. Trying to push this unit is pointless because you cannot get it until at least 5-10 minutes into the game, and then you're letting yourself go from having more economy buffs and just better frontline units. This unit could be a little bit easier to get, but even then I feel like it would be, they still wouldn't be that much higher. Number 16, we have the Gondor Knights. Not a bad unit on paper, but the requirement is that you have the space for a stables. And what else do you get from a stables? Absolutely nothing. Gondor is a faction that has a lot of need for all types of buildings. A barracks, an archery range, resource buildings, upgrade buildings. You've got so much to work with, but honestly, too little space to work with it. On camps it's even harder because you've only got 6 plots, so it's more than likely you'll be building a stables on an outpost, and by the time you get that, you're going to have to be spending a lot of money to get this unit, unless you built farms everywhere outside the base. But they aren't the worst unit in the world. Again, there's so many cavalry, it was hard for me to put this one so low because it is strong. But the problem is, there's just so many good units of cavalry that it's hard to say, oh yeah, this unit is good, but you have to kind of think of all the bad things you have to go around doing first. And honestly, I hardly ever use this unit, just because Gondor is not a faction that needs a large roster of cavalry. They just don't. Their infantry far superior in nearly every way. Number 15, the Gundabad Warg Riders. Not unlike the Direwolf Riders, this unit has very little I can really talk about because, again, Like every Misty Mountain unit, they have no stats on the Wikipedia that I normally get all the stats from. So all I can say is, this is a tier 3 unit. You're required to get both the Defiler and Bolg to even recruit this unit from a Gundabad barracks. But I'm assuming from how capable they have shown themselves to be when I've used them, the little times I have used them, I'd say they're about the same stats as Gondor Knights, which is a tier 1 unit. And even though I've ranked them lower than this unit, that's only because I don't know what this unit is actually capable of. It has a very good active ability to just be better at charging things, which is always a good thing to have. And their upgrades are pretty easy to get. And again, the Defiler is a very good hero to just have them around, which of course you need him around. And he just gives them all the buffs they need. Also, you can sacrifice one of them to make all your other units nearby even stronger with Azog, the Defiler. So, take what I've said about this one with a grain of salt, because even I don't know how good this unit is, or how bad this unit is. That's why it is at number 15. At number 14, we have the Rohirrim Archers. Now, what makes this cavalry unit better than the Elkrider cavalry unit? Firstly, they can get heavy armor, so that means more health. They have a Rohan ability, which all Rohan cavalry gets, where they just have even more health for leveling up. They have all the heroes in their roster that can ride with them, so that's even more damage, more armor, so many other buffs on top of that. And this unit, unlike the Elkriders, doesn't stutter step. That is one of the biggest problems with the Elkriders. They stutter step. This unit stays in formation and just shoots. This formation is far more valuable than the 2 rows of 5 for cavalry archers. I cannot stress that enough. This unit also just works with Rohan in general because it is a cavalry nation. So of course it's going to work better. At number 13, personally my most hated cavalry unit, the Glorfindel Riders. And I'm actually going to show it you now here why I hate this unit so much. They're just so tightly knit. In an infantry unit, I'd be fine with it. But cavalry, this little gap is the difference between these, just one guy getting hit by a pike and 2 getting hit by a pike. And look at the difference with the enlarged riders, which are way up higher on the list. That gap is far more significant, meaning if a bad hit happens, only 1 or maybe even 2 is going to get hit. But because of how tight knit they are, more of them are going to get hit. Anyway, back to why this unit is here. Their stats are good. They are probably the fastest attacking cavalry unit, meaning that if you want them to just harass an enemy base, you can do that. They are pretty hard to knock down. Not impossible to knock down. There are a few things that actually knock them down, despite the fact they have a passive that says they can't be knocked down. But on top of that, you also have to get Forged Blades, Heavy Armor, and Shields to recruit this unit. And again, considering that this unit exists, more than half cheaper, there's just so little I can say to give this unit some credibility. They're good at killing monsters. So if you don't like using pikemen, you can always use this to kill monsters. I'm sorry. It's just that their abilities are a bit outdated. And they don't really serve their faction any real justice. If they had more compatibility with Glorfindel, or the other way around, I feel like they have a bit more love. But the fact they're also a heroic unit just kind of makes you think, why am I spending all this money on a unit that is not quite as good as their basic counterpart? At number 12, we have the Rohirrim of the Eastfold. The main difference between them and the main Rohirrim, that I personally prefer, is that this unit has a stance that allows them to gain damage and armor, but they no longer trample. And now you understand why this unit is here. They are quite decent at dealing with enemies just in close combat if you don't want to trample things, which is fine, but only because they no longer trample does not mean their hitbox does not still collide with an enemy. And in particular, pikes can still do incredible damage to this little unit. So that is why it's better to use them against only cavalry, monsters, or buildings. And cavalry does not do a lot of damage to other cavalry most of the time. Cavalry is not recommended to fight against any kind of monster. Maybe against something like Grond, but then again, all cavalry is good against Grond. And buildings, if you want to play the harassment game, fine. I personally do not play that kind of way because I only play PvE. But, given everything, this unit is good, just not what I prefer to get. Number 11, the Battlewagon. This one is a bit of a wild card. It's a single entity, which I'm classing as cavalry because otherwise there'd only be one cavalry unit for the entirety of the dwarves, and then 2 sub-factions would be left out of this. But this unit has a different upgrade depending on the faction you choose. For the dwarves of the Iron Hills, which is what we have here, you get extra defences, and that's fine, but it doesn't really give more to the unit. Erebor allows you to do even more trample damage and less deceleration, which is probably the most preferred battle wagon, which is why the battle wagons of Erebor that the AI use are very dangerous. And then there's the battle wagons of the Iron Hills, Ered Luin even, the Blue Mountains. That are a bit weird. They give them a mobile ballista, which does not do any kind of siege damage. It's just a slightly more damaging pierce attack, which, I mean, it's okay, but it really doesn't fit well with the unit. What you want with this is just to trample in, crush everything in a straight line, and then walk back out again and heal. Because if you even touch a pike, this unit is going to slowly just disintegrate. And like most cavalry units, are actually really good at dealing with heroes, which is always a good thing to have. And yeah, this unit definitely has its values. I personally just don't use them because I'm terrible at microing them. I just see the AI running them in and I'm just like, yeah, this unit is good, but I don't think I can master this one. It's a unit you can very easily quickly forget about. Have an enemy walk into them, and then you just suddenly try to select the units, and then you realise, oh, they're dead. Yes, it takes a lot of practice. I'm not sure what kind of practice is best to use this unit, but I'm sure there's someone out there who knows how to use this unit like a master. I am not that person, unfortunately. At number 10, we have the Black Knights. And I know this isn't the actual Black Knights unit, it's the Shadow Guard, but it's basically the same unit, but on horseback. And I wasn't going to spend a couple hours trying to grind the Stronghold of the Iron Crown. It is not worth it. Anyway, this unit is good. Heroic level stats, which is exactly what you expect from a heroic unit, can be summoned instantly from the base, so you don't have to waste the time recruiting them. Except you can only get one. And wait, can you get 1 or 2? I don't actually remember. But basically, yeah, it's a permanent unit that you can summon. You get some of them, but then you have to wait a long time to get more. And instead of recruiting them and spending money on them, you get a tier 4 power. So you don't always see this unit. It's not something you can just shortcut your way to. It's a definite upgrade compared to the Gundabad Wolf Riders. But their abilities are kind of lacking in that they're trying to be a support unit, but at the same time not being a support unit, if you get what I mean. With the Black Knights in particular, unlike the Shadow Guard, you're not very likely to be actually attacking. So your first ability and the passive ability you get after that are mostly redundant because they are never going to be really sitting still in combat healing other troops. They don't heal themselves. And then also healing heroes. There's only one hero that actually has a mount. And then there's technically Drauglim, but in either of his mounted states, he is only a temporary form. So it is a good unit, but I feel like if they had different abilities to kind of show off a bit more uniqueness compared to the Shadow Guard, I think they would actually be a lot higher. It's just that their abilities are a bit just don't work with their aesthetic. Number 9, the Warg Riders. Personally, I think this is the one saving grace of Isengard's early game. And I think if this didn't exist, Isengard would be screwed. The fact you can get them straight away from the beginning of the game is a good help. They are honestly not that bad. You shouldn't run them into enemy units straight away. That is kind of the thing that Isengard should not be doing. Instead, use them to attract enemies to your main army of like Wildmen and the Uruk Scouts. And then as they're running into the Scouts and Wildmen, while they're still chasing the Wargs, have the melee infantry soften them, and then let the cavalry charge back in to kill them. This unit does really well on the charge, not so much when it has to stay in prolonged combat. Shaku does help prevent that. The fact he can instantly regenerate their Howl ability and the extra experience just means they can get to level 5 a lot faster, putting them on the same tier as your elite units like the Armoured Urukai once you get them all their upgrades. Also, the Blood Warg upgrade you can get them just means they can stay in combat even longer. They have this lovely little aesthetic where they're all very dark and menacing. It really gives them... It gives Isengard a fighting chance in the early game, in my opinion. It gives them what they need to try and keep in it long enough to get that 1000 and then upgrade their Uruk pit. At number 8, we have the Rohirrim, the tried and true. The generic of all generic cavalry, and my god, they are perfect. I can't give them any bad prompts because they have everything they need. They get it really early on. You can make them cheaper straight from the get-go just by building stud farms in your base instead of flour mills, which a lot of the time you can now do, but I have in the past found that going straight for cavalry over peasants can actually be detrimental against a lot of factions because they make pikemen a lot more often nowadays. And a lot of maps are quite tight-knit where cavalry is not as effective. But if you put them in their wedge formation, have them trample down everything, you have nearly no problems because even though they have a little low health, you have lots of ways to heal yourself back up, either with your main base, an outpost, or a settlement. You can get them anywhere. And this unit can just keep fighting on and on and on. Number 7, on the opposite side of Rohan's cavalry spectrum, we have the Royal Guard. They're best, they're creme de la creme, but the requirements for them are very extensive. Firstly, you need a stables. You need their stables to be level 3. You need to have built the Rohan shields. You need to have researched the forged blades and heavy armor from the stables. And then you need to spend 1600 on each individual unit, which can be decreased using a tier 3 power. But even after all of that, this unit just has some things that work really well, and then their abilities leave them lacking. First ability deals more damage and has more armor against pikemen. Other ability just makes them better at being cavalry. And then their final ability at level 10 buffs heroes, which at that point, you're never going to get a level 10 Royal Guard. I've never managed it anyway. You just have so many other units to choose from. I feel like this unit just kind of gets left at the wayside. It could definitely be used and be used amazingly. It is an amazing unit. Is the second best in terms of stats. But... yeah, it falls behind personally for me just because of all the requirements that you require to get, and then knowing you've already got a giant army of cavalry from literally everywhere else. Number 6, the menacing Morgul Knights. This unit is what I want the Royal Guard and the Shadow Knights to be like. They are thematic, they are powerful, they are not difficult to obtain, but not too easy either. It's quite expensive. And they work perfectly with the Nazgul. They don't lose as much momentum in their charge if they are in the presence of the ring spirits. And then as they die later on, as they level up, they turn into whites, which you can then transform if you have the influence of Sauron on Minas Morgul into wretched wraiths, which then follow the Nazgul, and when they take damage, they heal the Nazgul. It's just a perfect combination. It's so good. It's so good. And the only thing that lets this unit down is the fact that it's the only dedicated cavalry unit of Mordor. But it is still amazing. I see this unit on the battlefield and I instantly just think, crap, have I got enough pikemen? Do I have enough ways to protect my archers? I need to kill this unit. It is that kind of unit that just has that much presence on the battlefield. And although there's not that many ways to make them good, they are still an amazing unit on their own. But if they had anything else to buff them, I think they'd be a bit too good, honestly. Number 5, the Ram Riders. Personally, why I love Iron Hills so much, and if they didn't exist, I think the Iron Hills would be the worst sub-faction of the Three Dwarves. Just a perfect unit. It's perfect. I just can't give enough credit to it. You have a few restrictions to go by, but nowhere near as many as the Royal Guard, as the Shadow Guard, the Shadow Knights. All you need to do is have Narin and have elite equipment and have the Iron Hill Scout, which you can just start with as for 100. You have a singular Ram Rider who can just go around collecting settlements all by himself, can scout out the enemy what they're doing. It's so versatile. It starts off as just a simple scout and then turns into your elite unit, which I love. I love this unit. It has saved me in so many different occasions, especially against some of the more difficult factions of the game, Misty Mountains in particular, and Rohan. This unit just slaps them. It slaps them in the face. It's so good. And they just keep going. The dwarves buff them by so much in the fact they can have even further upgrades. And then upgrades on those upgrades. And then Narin being around just gives them that extra buff. And you can even make them fully melee if you just give them the last stand and one of Narin's abilities. They just do not die. It is incredible what this unit is actually capable of. You have to put a lot of effort into it. But I think if you're going to put any amount of effort into a unit, you want to put in the maximum effort for this unit. I can guarantee you, nearly every time you use this unit right, you can guarantee the victory. Number 4, the Exiles, and I'm ranking them both together, the Royal Vanguard. The reason I'm ranking them together is because they are a pseudo-elite unit, but unlike other pseudo-elites, for example, the Uruk-hai Scouts, this unit, it just works. It has the exact same stats as the basic Rohirrim, has the exact same formation as the basic Rohirrim, but why do I put this up so much higher? Despite the fact you can only get 3 of each, and you can only get them from your outpost, their recruit speed is insanely fast. You can recruit all 3, and in less than a minute you'll have all 3 of them on the field. Also, this camp has a passive buff around it that gives anything that is near it a heroic statue effect, but better. It gives them movement speed. And if you don't understand the gravity of that kind of power, a cavalry unit with more speed means it is faster than every other cavalry unit in the game. Not just that, but then it can move to wherever it needs to be at a much faster pace. And then we come on to the fact the Royal Vanguard themselves, 3 units you get from the King's Camp, which is the upgraded version of the Exiles Camp, have 0 upkeep. They have no command points whatsoever. You just have 3 units of Rohirrim, which is amazing for a faction that has very obvious struggles with their economy. So not having to pay 270 command points is a big thing, especially if you've not got the command points for a large Rohirrim army. In the late stages of a game, that's going to become less of a problem. But disregarding all of that, these units are still amazing. They do everything right. They just fall behind the last 3 by a small margin. And we're going to go into each of them now. At number 3, we have the Imladris Riders, the Rivendell Riders, whatever you want to call them. This unit, I love it. I love this unit. I have done a game with 2 friends where all I did was just spam in Rivendell Riders. I had Arwen, I had Elrond, I had Glorfindel. That was it. I just ran all of that and we won so hard. It was ridiculous. This unit is amazing. They have near elite stats compared to every other cavalry unit. They are a very rare breed. They haven't got elite tier stats, but you can upgrade them to get near elite stats. And on top of that, their ability just slaps the Glorfindel Wind Riders in the face. They get, for their ability, movement speed and less trample deceleration, which just means they are better cavalry. Their ability has no downside. And then on top of that, you can get as many of them as you want. They can be discounted by building in largest farms, which I don't always use, but in that game I did use. And also all the things you can put on top of them. They get bonus attack speed from the Eregion Blades, which with cavalry, that makes a difference, because even though not all the time you're going to be trampling everything, against buildings, it just means you get to kill them faster. Against heroes, you kill them faster. This cavalry unit, it does everything right. I can't think of any faults of this unit other than it has 5 entities. But even then, that's fine, because that means less entities are going to die all the time to getting trampled. They just have more health overall. And Miravor just means 1 entity, which is worth at least 3 basic entities of most tier 1 cavalry. You just get it back. Really good unit. I can't think of anything wrong. And you have 3 heroes that work with them. They don't give them any real buffs, but you can give them self-healing. You can give them a more potent existence by having the heroes around to just give them a little bit of an extra oomph. In second place, the Knights of Dol Amroth. I imagine a lot of people, when they first clicked on this video, thought this unit was going to be number 1. And I was actually really close to putting it as number 1. But there is one big difference between why this unit is getting number 2 and not the number 1 spot. Firstly, you're required to get Imrahil before you can recruit them. They can't be discounted. But other than that, they are amazing. Elite units, so they have self-healing outside of combat, which is all the time they're just moving and not hitting anything or getting shot by anything. Imrahil buffs them. You can make a mini Knights of Dol Amroth unit with Imrahil, and then Imrahil gives them self-healing in combat. It's amazing what this unit is capable of. And their abilities, though they're not the best, they do work as a cavalry unit. It's quite impressive what they are capable of if you give them the time and effort you need. And their buff that works on cavalry works on all cavalry. Every unit we've talked about so far can be buffed by the Knights of Dol Amroth, not just the Gondor Knights. And then also, of course, Imrahil is giving them a buff, which is another amazing thing. It just means their base stats, which are some of the best stats in the game, get made even better. And then you've also got Faramir, who can run around with you, Aragorn, who can run around with you, Gandalf, who can run around with you. You've just got so much to work with on this unit. And honestly, these 3 units are all the cavalry that Gondor needs, and it's beautiful what this unit can do. I'd say, other than the Ram Riders, this is a unit you can, if you master, you will feel so much just intrinsic value from just trying this and making it work. It's so good. It's so good. And here we are at the number 1 spot, the Knights of Meduseld, led by the Captains of Rohan, which you can recruit from the King's camp. Why is this unit and its 3 sub-heroes, their pseudo-heroes, the best cavalry unit in the game? Firstly, they have 3 pseudo-heroes. A hero that can recruit another unit of the type that it is, so that means another cavalry unit. A hero who can heal every unit in its vicinity by regaining an extra entity, and another one that can just move even faster, which we've already talked about. Fast moving cavalry is amazing. And on top of that, they all give everyone around them fearlessness, which is amazing. But then there's the base captains as well, which have more you can have a active ability of more damage reduction from all melee except for pikemen, which is stupidly good, and it comes with no negatives. No reduction in speed, no reduction in armor, no reduction in damage. It's amazing. And on top of that, you can have as many of those last captains, as many as you want. This unit is not restricted by a limit. You can only have one of the heroes of each, obviously, but the basic captains, you can have as many as you want. And there are times I have just summoned an entire army of these captains, and they're really cheap. 860 you can get them down to. 300 for the captain, 560 for the knights, normally 800, but that's still insanely good. And you don't need the warhorse breeding that you need for the Royal Guard all the way over there to make them cheaper. You just get the extra cost reduction because they're not classed as heroic cavalry. You just get a cost reduction for nothing. It's so good. This unit is honestly the reason why I have loved Rohan so much. Ever since the Exile camp was introduced, Rohan has been one of my favourite factions to play, just because cavalry spam is so much fun. And Rohan can do it no matter what scenario. If anyone has seen the 1.5 hour long video of me fighting the Misty Mountains as Rohan, then you'll know exactly why I love these units so much. There's just so much good that these units are capable of, that it just, honestly, it makes you wonder why Rohan has so many other units of cavalry when you have an amazing unit like this. But it just gives them, they have so much flavour as well. I can keep singing their praises all day. I do this with every number one. There's just everything right. They do every single thing right, and I love it. And I'm going to call it here because otherwise I'm just going to be talking about this all day. And my throat is getting very dry. I hope you all enjoyed this ranking video. It'll be the last ranking video for a while. I will be telling you all why on Wednesday for anyone that is watching up to this point. And I will see you all then. Farewell.